Hello everyone, this is Hannah Musa and this is my week 3 presentation for MPA 510 and I'm going to be discussing Herbert Simon and his theory, the Proverbs of Administration. So as a quick overview, so that's Herbert Simon right there, and on the bottom is just kind of a general picture of Proverbs. I thought I'd put that there since that's the name of his theory. And then I'm going to be discussing his 4 accepted administrative principles. And then towards the end of his work, he talks about an approach to administrative theory. So I'll be discussing a couple points from there as well. So to start off, he talks about the 4 principles, which are specialization, unity of command, span of control, and then organization, which is by purpose, process, clientele, and place. As far as specialization, he talks about specialization needing to be done in a way that maximizes your efficiency. So he gives the example of nursing and 2 different options. The first being to have nurses concentrated by a specific district, or the second option, which would be to concentrate them by what their specialization is. So one could have been, for example, in-school nursing. The other could have been tuberculosis testing. So he talks about basically one of those 2 options and what is the best way of those 2 to maximize efficiency. And then he talks about unity of command, which is also another important point. He talks about how those with a certain specialization should only have one boss, so they're not getting conflicting orders from different people in authority. So he talks about the importance of that. And an example that I have, I'll just describe it because it's kind of hard to show. So working at Kohl's, I worked at the cash register, but we had our head manager, and then we had several managers below her as assistant managers. And then there would be a bunch of different situations where I would, maybe ask a question and then get one thing from one manager and then another from the head manager or vice versa. So I thought that was kind of annoying because it just felt like they didn't really talk to each other. So it's just to show the importance of unity of command, something I definitely agree with. And then he talks about span of control, and that he talks about basically what is the appropriate number of having of how many people should be under one supervisor. So he gives an example of whether it should be several people or less people. He gives examples of research that's been done by several people giving different numbers. So basically, going to giving another example, going back to working at the county, that was a lot easier as far as having just one person kind of telling you what to do. So we had, I think, about 10 people that were on staff at the office. So we had our chief of staff and our deputy chief of staff, but you did just have a sense you knew what you were going to do. You knew what the appropriate thing to do was and how to do it. So that was just, a lot easier having that kind of limited span of control there. And then he goes on to talk about organization. So he talks about first that purpose and process go hand in hand with each other because you need obviously you need a process to come to a purpose. So he talks about how you have this process of somebody writing a letter, and then what exactly that's for, what that purpose comes out to be, which is basically to, for example, working at the county, we sent out letters basically to get say like, oh, hey, we agree with this situation, or we don't agree with this situation, we're happy to help you with this, or something like that. So it was to constituents or other departments. So So we had that purpose in mind with those letters. And then he talked about clientele and place, which also went together. And then basically in the end, combining all four of these. So he gave an example of a fire department, and he talks about how it's how for a fire department they give their purpose or their mission in their mission statement, saying that basically they're there to prevent fires or prevent them from spreading any further. And then he talks about how it's in certain cities, so certain city X, I think, as he puts it in there. So he talks about how those things together, all those four parts, basically make up what organization is supposed to be. And then moving on to the second half, he talks about an approach to administrative theory. And then the first part he talks about is basically the description of, say, what a person does, their function in their office and their place that they work in basically needs to be more than just that, just what their title is. It needs to have more. It needs to say, what exactly does that mean? So kind of going back to the county also, it's, when I met with my supervisor, I kind of wanted to have more detail as to what exactly the supervisors did, like what, to find out basically what I could share with constituents, what I couldn't share. That was, helpful in knowing that. And then secondly, he talks about limits of just human limits, basically, and then how that impacts the decisions they make. He talks a lot about that, and he talks specifically about three different things. He talks about a person's physical speed, or maybe their reaction time might be good for them or be bad for them or something like that. Then their values and also their knowledge. So he talks about those three things and how basically it impacts decision making when a person is doing their job. So a couple of strengths and weaknesses I found with his theory. The strengths I found were when he talks about the four different principles. I liked how he described each one, especially giving examples that are kind of easy to understand and still relatable to today, despite this being back in the 50s, I believe, or 40s. So I thought that was really good to, be able to understand each of the different areas that he talks about. As far as weaknesses, when he has his discussion on specialization, although I like the examples that he gave, I didn't like when he said, quote, specialization merely means that different persons are doing different things. And since it's physically impossible for two persons to be doing the same thing in the same place at the same time, two persons are always doing different things, end quote. And I just felt like that didn't necessarily apply. I just felt like, kind of flashing back to Kohl's, we were, a lot of us were trained to work on the cash register, and we're often doing it at the same time. Maybe not exactly the same way, but we were still, doing the same job essentially. And I don't know if I misread that, but I just didn't necessarily agree with it. Then the second weakness I found was that he didn't include Mary Parker Follett when he discussed studies on human and social aspects of administration. I don't know. I thought when he talked about his research in the end, he was talking or tying another person's research in there at the end. He was talking about, I believe, research done on social workers and their caseloads. I just felt like tying in Mary Parker Follett would have been also beneficial, since she talks a lot about basically human interest and making sure that people are treated in the right way in their workplaces. So that's my reference there. Use the textbook that we've been using there. And that's it. And thank you everybody for watching, and I hope you have a great weekend. Bye.